but it may have caused some problems down the road. But anyway, he said, you don't want terrorists to find out about this stuff.
They already know.
They already know.
They used it on 9/11.
Obviously, they didn't use it, and we'll get to the very proof, and just the more proof in just a minute. Yeah. So I thought it was amusing, and I wrote back. I said, look, you can buy this stuff on eBay. This chemical reaction has been known about for, it's been over 100 years. You know, it's not it's all over the web, of course, so it's not surprising. Anyway, it's part of standard procedure when there's a possibility of arson to look for this residue. It's very distinctive. In fact, the code for fire and explosion investigations, NFPA 921, specifies, I quote, unusual residues might remain from the initial fuel used to accelerate the start of the fire. These residues can arise from thermite, magnesium, or other pyrotechnic materials. So thermite is specifically called for in standard procedure. You're supposed to look for this stuff. Now, let me ask you, was the World Trade Center disaster a crime scene? Yes. Did it involve fire? Yes. Should they look for thermite? Okay, yes. I want to mention one other thing. When you find this residue, you know there was a crime committed. The fingerprint is too hot. Fingerprints burn off of this stuff. So you can't, in general, tell who set the material there. You can't tell how many, but you know there was a crime. And it's an insider, right? They got inside the building and planted this material. So you actually learned a great deal. And let's see, okay, let's talk about this for a minute. This report is in the work of the Worcester Polytechnic Institute material scientists. It talks about sulfur in steel. You're remembering sulfur, right? And what happened was, we talked to Professor Barnett. I've emailed him, and my colleague has talked to him on the phone. This is a very mysterious. The New York Times called this perhaps the deepest mystery uncovered in the investigation. What happened was these guys were able to get samples from World Trade Center 7, not hit by a jet, a sample of steel, and another sample from the rubble of the towers. And in this sample, using electron microscopy, they find sulfur. There's also copper. We'll talk about that. Now, iron is what you expect in steel. Little manganese, you expect that. Oxygen, of course, that's around. But the important thing here is, where does all this sulfur come from? You see, here's quoting now from the appendix of the FEMA report. They also published a paper. Evidence of a severe high-temperature corrosion attack on the steel, including oxidation and sulfidation, with subsequent intergranular melting, was readily visible in the steel. So something had attacked the steel, very high temperatures with sulfur. What could it be? You know? Of course, at the time, anyway, severe corrosion and erosion of these samples from Building 7 and the towers. Remember, Building 7 wasn't hit by a jet, so we can't blame this on the jets. Are a very unusual event, to say the least. No clear explanation for the source of the sulfur has been identified. Now, you would think the FEMA, this is FEMA, in the FEMA report, an appendix. We need more investigation. What did NIST do with this puzzle? This data, this very important piece of information about trying to tell us what happened on 9/11. They ignored it, you know, and that's sad. Now, when the NIST report comes out on building, let's see, James, let me just remind you real quick, James Gurley's here. He put together a request for correction to NIST. Did we talk about sulfidation? I can't remember. Oh, okay, we'll have to add that next time. We'll watch for it when it has Building 7 come out. Okay, this is one of the experiments I did, a steel cut using steel cut in a thermate experiment, you can see that it was cut dramatically and shows this corrosion and sulfur attack on the steel in these experiments. So, here's the question that was posed to NIST and which they answered. Was the steel tested for explosives or thermite residues? The combination of thermite and sulfur, called thermate, slices through steel like a hot knife through butter. So this is, that sounds like a quote directly out of our interview, Alex, actually. Answer to the public. NIST did not test for the residue of these compounds in the steel. I'd like to ask how they get away with that. It's in the code. Well, okay. But you know, this is something as scientists we expect them to do. Now,
Break the law not to do it.
That's actually, yeah. Alex says breaking the law, and since they did not follow the NFPA code, I would have to agree. Because it's required as part of the code to, when there's a crime scene with fire, you look for thermite. Okay, this is, now this is the new stuff. Of course, the other, pouring it out, that I haven't shown that before, ever. It's just last week, actually, that or no, this week, Thursday, okay, that we did that. I'd done it once before, but never shown it before. Okay, now we want to look at these spheres. I call them microspheres because they're tiny to scale. Here's 200 microns. These are, this one, maybe 150 microns. Most of these little spheres in the dust are tiny. They come in sizes from a few microns up to over a millimeter. A millimeter is about a 16th of an inch. You can see that with your eye. This is from an electron microscope, a scanning electron microscope image. Now, these spheres are abundant in this dust. This is dust from the 9/11 disaster. On 9/11, this is Jeanette McKinley. She had an apartment. Here's a picture of the inside of her apartment. Here's the outside. It's across the street. It's about here. So across Liberty Street and down a little ways from the towers. When the South Tower collapsed, the windows broke in her apartment. She was inside. She was not expecting the towers to collapse, and she stayed inside, and of course left very quickly when the South Tower collapsed and the window broke. So the pressure from that, we've all seen that dust cloud, right, expanding through the streets and so on. There's also debris. In her apartment there were chunks of concrete and glass, chunks of glass and concrete. So it just blasted, of course, there's windows, 2 windows there broke, but it just blasted through. She had the foresight to put a wet towel around her head to get out of there.